we went from 100 new to 600 new and 50 used to 500 used. So it was over 1,000 cars a month inside 4 years. And it was just, we had a great team.
Hey, what's going on, all you Keep the Changers? Welcome back to my favorite time of the week when I get to talk to some exceptional people about how they live exceptional lives. And today, my guest is Chris Martinez. Chris and I met each other at Car Church a number of years ago. He's the CEO of IgniteUps.Ai, the chairman and founder of J. Joseph Group, which is his publishing group. And he's written a number of best-selling books, which I'm excited to have him talk about. He's been in automotive for a long period of time. He just recently resigned as a general manager of Mercedes-Benz of San Antonio, but he's an influencer at a young age. And man, he's accomplished a lot. This guy looks like an actor. He's got the suave of an actor, and he's an incredible leader. Funny thing is, I told my wife that this morning. I said, this guy, he's smooth, smoother than the other side of the pillow.
I appreciate that. And that, I'm a work in process, sir. I'm always trying to get better.
And you're always so polite and such a gentleman. So thank you. Yeah, isn't that so true? We're just trying to get better, man. Absolutely. So, Chris, congratulations on your successes. What I'd like to do, if I could today, is start off with let the audience know where you've been, man. I mean, what got you to where you are currently? Kind of a little bit about what you deem is appropriate stuff to talk about in terms of your background. And it's just a story, a success story that I think a lot of people need to hear.
Humble beginnings, single mom, all that fun stuff, food stamps, all that growing up, going through a lot of the things that, most people, a lot of people go through. But, I thank God I found the car business. I was 22 years old and I have a twin brother, and he told me I just moved to moved back to Las Vegas, and I was gonna initially go work construction with my uncle because, that's what we do, right? We go work construction. And so I didn't want to do it. And my twin brother was working as a property manager at an apartment place. And he said, look, well, this company tried to recruit me. You should go check them out. And I said, okay, what's the name of the company? He said, CarMax. And I said, you mean the lip balms? And he said, no, it's like a car company or something. And this was 2003. And so I said, okay, I'm gonna go check it out. And so I went, was at a DoubleTree hotel. So they hadn't even opened their doors yet. And so I go in and I go to the front counter. I said, hey guys, you guys were trying to recruit my twin brother, but I'm the next best thing and you guys should hire me. And so the rest was history. They kind of got me in and started my career in the automotive space.
So you actually told him you were not your brother?
Walked in.
What's your brother's name?
His name is Sal Jonas Martinez.
Oh, that's a great name. So you didn't walk in and say, hey, Sal Jonas here. I just,
No. Well, we're fraternal twins, so we don't look alike at all.
I got
Make who look like we're cousins, but that was how I started in the car business. And I give them a lot of credit because they when I got started there, they had 30 locations, and in 6 years, I was able to help them go into 5 markets, grand open stores. The amount of training that I had there was, I couldn't have gotten it any other way. It was like almost like perfect timing for me to join an organization. And, at one point I wanted to become a general manager. So they gave you a individual development plan. And so you had to, go through 6 months of service, 6 months of purchasing, acquisitions, auctions, 6 months of the business office. I had to be a title clerk. I had to go through every part of the business if I wanted to be a general manager, that's what you had to do.
Mm.
And that was like a 2-year roadmap. And so you had to do all of that. And I left there and went to Universal Toyota because that's where, people were were making a bunch of money from what I heard, right?
Mhm.
I heard people were making dough. I was a sales manager at CarMax. And when I found out salespeople were making times what I was making. I said, I'm gonna have to check that out. And sure enough, I checked it out and it was real. So I was shocked. I said, man, where have I been? I've been living under a rock or I don't know what to make of it. But it wasn't easy. It was a lot of work and, cold calling and, a lot of what I'm doing today now is, making sure that you're reaching out to people and making conversations and trying to grow your business as a sales professional. And, a lot of the things that I applied later on as a manager and running stores is, the foundational stuff I learned at CarMax. And then more importantly, all of the mentors I've had along the way that have helped me guide me and help me understand, how to really move the market and not just go in there and be a role player. It was really how can I drive the business and what can we do to help our teams be successful?
So you had a master's, almost like I think you said it online, like a Harvard education from your experience at CarMax. You're very familiar with what they're going through currently. You're very familiar with the market period and all and new, used, and fixed. And so from CarMax, you got a great education. You were a sales manager. You went to Universal Toyota, which is where is that in Texas?
Yes. And San
Yeah.
Antonio.
And go ahead.
Yeah, it's in San Antonio. And when I got here, it didn't matter that I had been a sales manager for the last 6 years. I was one of the youngest sales managers at the time, 23 and at
Wait,
CarMax.
you were 23
Yeah, yes, sir. And
as a sales manager at CarMax?
yes, sir.
Wow, that's impressive.
So it was just one of those things that, you didn't you go through and you learn so much. There was even a time you had to fly out to Atlanta to their CarMax Auto Finance division. And you had to sit in the chair and listen to conversations, see how the analysts scored the deals, what they did to all those relationships that were taking place and in the conversations with the dealer and all of that. So it was something that I've never seen anyone else experience outside of CarMax. And it was a really good foundation. And it helped me, at one point as a sales manager there, I was like, they used to score how many sales managers would call into the the lender. And so, at that time, 30 stores, 40 stores. By the time I left, it was 100 stores or a little over 100. But you could see how many managers would call the lender to try to redo the deal and see if they could overcome a decline. And I remember seeing those things that, that kind of thing just doesn't happen really outside of that environment that I was in. So, but when I went to Universal Toyota, it didn't matter that I had done all this stuff. I had to prove myself all over again because they think, yeah, you're CarMax, you're not a real salesperson, right? So and I was okay with that. Even today, like, for me, if things went sideways, I know something foundational that if I need to go back and sell cars, I could. Like
Mhm.
that's something that in my mind, I'm prepared for no matter what. Because
Yeah.
if you grew up the way I grew up, you always prepared for the worst and hope for the best. That was one of the things that you were just like, hey, look, things might go sideways, but we're gonna make light of any situation and we're gonna figure it out and make it happen. So that's kind of been the MO.
So you went to Universal and were you in sales, sales manager?
Sales. I went to sales and then I was an internet director or assistant internet director. And that was really a title that it was just a glorified salesperson title. But what I really needed was more access because the way the process wasn't the way I was accustomed. And so as being in that role gave me some freedom that I could work car deals the way I know how to work them and get them through and have a process and cadence to get them to the next step. And I had a really good internet director. She was pretty amazing. I got to see, the marketing side of the dealership and what they did, and email marketing and all that. So that's kind of where to this day I still have conversations with her. She's one of the brightest marketing people I know. And from there, the general manager, I was selling 30 cars a month there, and he became a buying partner at this Toyota store in Austin. And he brought me into his office and said, "Hey, Chris, I'd love to have you come work with me in Austin. I just became a buying partner. And at the time, I never even heard of that Toyota store. I said, there's a third store, another Toyota store. Like they were just underperforming for that market that you did. It was wild. I'd never even heard. I heard of the other Toyota stores at the time, but I hadn't heard of that one. And so I told my wife, I go, look, I don't, I got to do this because he's going to leave and they're going to change my pay plan. And, a salesman making the kind of money I was making at the time, I didn't think, I thought the first thing to do is cut everybody's pay plan, you know, which is not uncommon in that, in the automotive space. You know what I'm saying? The first thing they want to do is they look at pay plans and see if they need to right size the dealership and cut expense. And that's usually what most good GMs go in and do, right?
Mhm. Yep. Yep.
So we went to Austin, a store called Charles Mon Toyota, and there, that's where I really got to apply everything I had already learned, like from the marketing side to everything operational side in at CarMax. That's where I was able to go in and apply a lot of almost everything. We went from 100 new to 600 used, went from 50 used or 100 used, 100 new to 600 new, and 50 used to 500 used. So it's over 1,000 cars a month inside 4 years. And it was just, we had a great team. My mentor there, Jim DeMayo, my partner now. I had one of the guys there was Ty Reed, good sales manager, helped me out a lot, was the GSM at the time. And we just grew. We grew that store and did a great job and had a lot of good people. Alex Flores was with us in the beginning. He's helped us grow. We were in used cars, beating new cars. And then when they kind of put me in charge to oversee everything, I had to, I convinced them, hey, let's go to new. And he said, let's do it. And he blew it up. We blew it up. And then, you know, he ended up going a different path, but he's a great friend of mine. All the people that are along the way that I've worked with and had the privilege of working with, salespeople, I try to learn from everybody, right? Everybody, I feel like good qualities that I can, take away and see what I can do to apply it in my life. I've had a lot of great mentors and people in my life that have helped me along the way.
That's unbelievable. 100 to 600. I don't care if it's 4 years or 40 years or whatever. I mean, you've got to be kidding me. So how'd you do it? I mean, somebody's listening here. Were all the cards together? I mean, you said that was a store that wasn't even really on the Toyota radar with that group. You knew they had 2 stores. You didn't know about this 3rd store. You came in and obviously put great people around you as the people you've already mentioned. But what were the processes? What did you do to get it from there to here?
Well, at every level, there's a growth period, right? And I've talked about it in one of my books. You've got that forming stage, that norming stage, and then all of a sudden you got that storming stage, right? Like there's that stage that things kind of go sideways, and in any business, right? Like, there's levels to it, and at some point you get to a point where you start performing. But anytime you add a new player, it switches the dynamic. You're now figuring out how to work with each other. When you get to, from 150 to 250, that there's another, you got to start right sizing and seeing, okay, do I need to add more people here? Do I need more staff here? Do I need to update certain pay plans? Because, as the scale goes or grows, you don't want to have, you can blow out expenses pretty quickly. You know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
you got to make sure as you add more players, you have to adjust where you can. But, it even from building offices to expanding areas, like you have to understand at every level there's different pain points and different constraints that you're gonna have to fix. And that's what we did, and it's really about putting the right people in the right position,
Yeah,
you know?
true. So let's talk leadership. This doesn't happen by accident. Obviously, CarMax, that's a big part of their success in the past. And again, we mentioned already they've had a little bit of hiccup, but they've definitely developed, obviously, some incredible leaders. Let's talk about your philosophy from these 2 stores, and then we'll go from here. I want to hear what's next. But There, you have a philosophy on leadership, I'm sure. Tell us about what you believe leadership in the dealership is about, how it looks, and what the responsibility is of the people at the top and the people in the middle filling the gaps.
Well, I think my buddy Alex even said that, it's like, "Show me, don't," or it says, "Don't tell me, just show me," right? Like, sometimes a
Mhm.
lot of people just sit there and say, "Hey, do this,"
Yeah.
and you don't just go in there and, "Hey, let me show you what it looks like." And then you don't just do it once, one and done. You don't just say, "Hey, this is how you do it. We're gonna go," and then, "All right, I'll see you later." No, you've gotta go back and you've gotta inspect what you expect, right? You gotta have some accountability in there, and accountability. Some people make it sound like it's like you're beating people up, but you have to have different things in place so that one, you grow, and two, you have to have guardrails, right? We don't just go down the street 100 miles an hour and not expect something to happen. There's going to be some things that happen to have guardrails to make sure that you're either performing or you're on the right path to perform.
So think about when you look at John Maxwell talks about the 5 levels of leadership. And level one is position. Like, think about when you first became a manager. Me too. I'm the boss. That's the way it is. It was that directive, right? Accountability might mean do it. And then there's permission where I realized, you know what, that ain't working. Maybe I need to be friends with these people. And I got too friendly after a while. I mean, they're my bros. And after a while, because I was a manager and I had been a salespeople person with them, at first I was the jerk, then I became their partner in this. They stopped listening to me, I think, frankly, because I was being codependent. I wanted them to like me, right? And then so that's the permission piece. And then the production piece is number 3, which is what we're about in our industry. It's all about we can have a person on the desk that just frankly is not a good person, and you and I have both seen it, where they come in, and this doesn't have anything to do with how good a person they are, but they might come in at 8 o'clock and then leave that desk at 6:30, and they always have big butts because they never move, right? But man, they get it done. And every leader, you've been in these places, man, I like that guy. He's averaging 4 grand a car. He's getting it done, but they never do the next one. And this is kind of what I want to know. I don't know this. I'm asking you blind, but level 4 is people development, where they develop people that move. They go from, like, you're an example. If somebody developed you, you went to a store, somebody developed you, and you kept moving up the ladder. And people development leaders develop people, whatever role they're in, whatever position they're in, to get to that next level. Tell us about your philosophy on people development within your organizations so far, these 2 that you've been to.
Well, a lot of the times people, you'll hear it a lot where salespeople say, "Well, I don't ever get any training."
Mm,
And you'll hear it, and I've heard it so many times, and I'll rewind and I'll say, "Well, let's recap here. You say you don't have me training, and let's see what does training mean to in your mind, right?
mm,
You want a classroom training? You want one-on-one training? What does that look like?" And so part of what I've always promoted is training daily, morning, afternoon. You have to have it. It's just like brushing your teeth. You've got to do it. You've got to apply it. And then more importantly, throughout the day, you've got to have those one-on-ones. And as long as you're hitting those buckets, right?
yeah.
There's no reason why you can't say you're not developing people, but it's also about the right message. A lot of times people, sales managers just wing it and say, well, let's train on this today. Or let's train like when reality is you need a training cadence so that you be more impactful, you
Yeah.
know?
Love that cadence. And I hate it's so funny because David and I were talking about this last week, David Long, and I kind of asked him the same thing, kind of leading him, hoping he would say what I thought he was going to say. And the question was, what's the most important piece that has to be done by a manager regarding your people? And he said, one-on-one training. So it was like, good thing, but that's exactly what he said, right? Because that's what I was thinking. But, that to me, I mean, way back before you were even born, Joe Verde used to say, how often you do daily one-on-ones? And the manager would think, well, every week? No, oh, no. For one thing, you have a listening problem and a focus problem because you didn't hear the question. Let me re-ask it. And I love that. Success leaves clues, man. I mean, that's what I want to hear from you. You don't just go from here to there. By the way, how old were you when you're at Universal Toyota?
I was 27
And then how old at the Toyota store in Austin when you went there?
when I was there. I was 31.
So you're just a fast track son of a gun, man. I mean, you were on the track for success for sure. And again, you had some great people around you and you had great processes and the training was a big part. And again, I want to go back to that word training. Trainers train dogs. I used to work for a guy named Eustace Wolfington, and Eustace Wolfington had the largest automobile training company in the world. You might have heard of it again before you, but it was they trained in 2-year leases, what was called the plan by with Ford. David Long actually worked at a store and he was the number one salesman at his dealership and one of the top leasing salespersons in the country at this dealership. And he did 2-year leases. And Eustace's philosophy was we were catalysts, we were change agents. And that's kind of what I say to people. I'm not a trainer. Trainers train dogs. Trainers get up in front of a classroom. Catalysts look for where's shift need to happen. So it might be training, but it might be a training environment for 10 minutes. And then it's let's practice, drill, rehearse. And it sometimes it's coaching from the desk, like a hockey coach coaches from the bench, and sometimes it's coaching on practice the next morning. So yeah, I'm all about how can I change people's lives and how can I grow them? And it sounds like that's a big part of your philosophy as you moved up and you got all this great experience. So let's go past Universal a little bit and tell us kind of what went on next. And I want to talk more about leadership, but I want to hear the rest of this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So we went to Austin, Texas, and that's where we started that store. And initially, as soon as I got there, the part owners, Chris, do whatever we did at Universal Toyota. I need you to just duplicate it here.
Perfect.
I said, I'm in. And
Success
so
lose lose, right?
the first thing I did, well, they didn't have an internet team. They didn't have an internet department. They had like one lead source. I mean, when you think about the opportunity, and I remember walking in that store and there was actually customers in the store. I mean, it's a Toyota store, right? So initially you're already winning, right? Toyota, right?
Right.
And so you walk in there and you're like, I remember telling Jim that first day that I walked in, I said, man, this is a gold mine. Like every little thing that I could think of they weren't doing was just, it felt like they were operating a store back in the 1990s, right?
Right.
This was, 2011 is when I first got there. And you think about all of the things they weren't doing, a third party lead, Google, all of that. So social media wasn't really, I think MySpace or not, no, I think Facebook was still around, but that's when we actually were one of the first dealers on that Facebook thing too. By the way, I could tell you a cool story about that one day. But so we ended up just implementing everything there and we crushed it. That first month, I mean, they had cars that were 300 days old. I mean, we went in there and we just priced them accordingly to move, and all of a sudden, the first month we sold 220 cars. Went from 150 to 220 the first month, right? We increased advertising. We had a great advertising team. Just you think about all of the little things that we had to put in place in month one, and then, oh, by the way, you only have one manager. And it was funny because I remember I think the second week I was there, the used car manager, well, there was only one manager at that building. He was going on vacation. And so I guess you had to go and, run that department. And so I had to jump in there. And mind you, our advertising was just, it was really rocking pretty quickly. And I only had one finance manager with me, and we ended up selling like 22 cars that weekend. And it was pretty fun. Those were good times.
Why'd you leave there? What happened? Tell me a little bit about that after 6 years and what was the next journey for Chris Martinez?
Well, we had a great team, a lot of good people. A lot of people now are all general managers at stores now, which is pretty amazing. Or own their stores. Like, our good friend has done an amazing job with his career, Alex. But, after there, I built a software in that store, and the owner was my partner in that software. And that was one of our I felt was one of our, you know, secret weapons, right? We could actually get the data out of the CRM and the DMS without having to pick up a phone and wait 2 weeks to get rentals or the CRM to get us a list, right? Like, we could do it in seconds. Like, we could get data out, give it list to our salespeople, and we can make calls. And so we built this software tool to, clean the data hygiene. It was a CDP. We didn't call it a CDP back then, but that's what it was. And so, on the 6th year I was there, that's when it went from 2011, 2018, 7 years I was there. That's when I told the owner, I said, "I think it's time for me to go and try to see if I can sell this tool. I think we've done a great job with it. We're selling over 1,000 cars a month. I think it would be a great story." I wrote a book. I wrote 2 books during that time, and I said, "Let's go ahead and do it." And he agreed with me. And so I went out and what I'm doing today, making cold calls and calling people and signing up stores. And within 90 days, we ended up partnering up with a gentleman named Grant Cardone. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him.
Sure.
We got connected with him by a longtime friend of mine. And we ended up taking the software to NADA with him. And we got some stores pretty quickly. The direction they were going and the direction we were going, we decided to go, separate directions. Nothing bad. It was just, we just weren't aligned in certain areas. His team is great, but I ended up having a 90-day out on that agreement. So I literally had to wait till we could resell it. And during that time, a really good friend of mine today now, which he owns like 14 stores in Oklahoma. And he reached out to me and said, "Hey, look, I'd really like to see." He'd been reaching out to me to try to run one of his stores. And so, we connected and I said, "So you want me to, go check you out in Oklahoma City now, or which store you want me to go take a look at?" And he said, "No, I'd really like you to help me with my stores in Tulsa." And he has 4 stores out there. He has a Nissan, Infiniti, Porsche, and Mercedes. And he said, "I'd love for you to see if you could help me with those stores out there." And so I looked at it, and at the time, Nissan was like 50% of all their stores were not profitable. Same thing with Infinity. And so I said, "Man, these don't seem like the easiest brands." This is 2019, right before COVID, like a year before COVID. And I said, "You know what? I'm gonna go check it out." So I went down there and they were selling about 350 cars a month. And our best month ever, we sold 690 cars as a group, those 4 stores. And it was a great experience, and then
Mhm.
COVID happened, and I said, "Man, we gotta reach out to our owner base, and the only way I know how to do it is the auto miner," and so the software we built. And so then I was fortunate enough to meet a friend of mine that at the time was in between roles and made him a partner, and he was a great friend of mine, Aaron, and then he took it back to market, and we sold it 3 years after that, and we had a nice exit, and it was a great experience. And then once we did that, they had offered me an opportunity out here in San Antonio to run the Mercedes store, and so my wife had been wanting to come back to San Antonio, and sure enough, I the move and made it back to San Antonio in Texas, and here we are. So, it's been a great experience.
Yeah, good for you, man. You obviously have a real sharp mind to develop a software skill set. Nobody else thought of it. You did. And again, to bring some incredible collaborators around you. Grant always says you need collaboration, and you obviously were sharp enough to do that. And not everything will last forever, right? Everything
And
has its time. And then Aaron Sheets, I assume, was your partner, who was
now
an incredible guy. And so again, you just had some really good if one is listening to this that and a lot of you are that are in automotive, you get the power of these people and the influence these people have. So good for you.
well,
So it's
it's the team though, like, without the team you know, I can't stress enough how important the team is. And I think about it like I would look at football, right? Look at the teams that are winning. They're the ones with the least amount of mistakes, and they work together really well. And it's the team is you have to have that dream team. Those people that know which role they're in and how to execute in those roles.
Yeah, that's so good, Chris. Thanks for that. And now where you are, of course, you left Mercedes, you had some success there, some big time success. Every place you've gone, you've gotten bigger numbers. And now you're back to with this company. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, she just said cold call. I mean, here's a guy that's building another business. And you said, yep, that's what I'm doing. I'm cold calling and knocking on doors. That and again, what's that?
That's the name of the game.
Isn't oh man, that is so powerful. And to hear you say that, thank you for that. That's good. So let's talk about this. Who's the person that really had the most influence on you as a leader in this industry? Who do you think really was the one who, yep, that
You
one.
know, I think there's just so many good people. There's just a lot of them. I've had a lot of people that have said some things to me in my life that left a big impact. My wife has done an amazing job and just given me that motivation to just keep doing more. She's been my biggest cheerleader. We've been married since 2005. I've known her since I was 20 years old, and we've been together 25 years now. And like she's been one of my biggest cheerleaders. She's been one. Like I remember the first time I said, I've been talking about writing a book for a while, and she just said, just do it. And so things like that, those extra little pushes that you need in life that, without that number one person next to you, cheering you on, it's not as easy, and I give credit to my wife for a lot of that stuff because she's always been that one that just says, let's do it. That not a lot of people want to travel and move around. Some people like to just stick in one spot their whole lives. And, sometimes you have to move to grow.
Yeah. And you have how many kids?
We have 4.
And they're how old?
I have 8, 10, 12, and 29.
Oh man, that's awesome. So the biggest role you and I play, you're a person of faith, you're not quiet about it. Obviously, that's such a big role, and it shows in who you are and your humility. You're a very humble leader. And to hear you say that about your partner, that is the biggest decision we make in our life is who we're going to decide to who's going to be our partner, right? And I agree with you. I definitely stepped up and got into, my wife was a Mercedes. I was a Kia. No offense to Keeler dealers out there, but the old Kia, right?
Yeah.
And I just got the greatest partner on the planet, and we are co-ministry leaders together. We between the two of us, we have lots and lots of kids. We're blended. And that, I didn't put this on my whiteboard, Chris. I never put it on my whiteboard that I always wanted a dealership and I wanted a training company. But I never put on my whiteboard, I wanted the wife that was the rock star that she is. And I always knew I wanted kids, but between the two of us, we have 10 kids between the two of us. And between the two of us we have 15 grandkids. And between the two of us, we have 34 people if we went out to dinner together. So, like, and it is awesome. It is a result of a blended marriage. None of us wanted that. But the gift that God gave us by having that happen in the adversity came this incredible union. And I'm honored that I get to be a patriarch to all these kids, not just my own, but theirs as well. So it's just such a gift. But there's something about, and I'm going to say this as a father, there's something about a man that's a good husband and a good father that also is a great leader. And again, it shines with you. Your humility comes through. And there was never a doubt that you were good at that piece. I think so many people in this industry, unfortunately, they might be good at running the business, but they're not so good when they hit the railroad tracks and go home. And
Yeah.
priorities are what they
Unfortunately, yeah, there is. And then, don't get me wrong, growing up, a part of it, when I think about my mom, I used to, you know, before I got into the car business, there's a part of me that, Like, I didn't grow up with a dad, he died when I was 10. I didn't get to know him, and so, part of that story, when you grow up and you're out on the streets and you're getting into trouble and doing all that stuff, you know, it wasn't an easy road, but, you know, had I not met my wife, who knows what path I might have taken, because she's really kind of been that level, that person that kind of helped me grow up in a sense. You know what I'm saying? So, I've had some my uncles are great role models, a lot of good people. I just got to see a different side of life with my wife. And so that's where I look at, and my kids, I try to say, how can I better teach them? How can I be that role model, that person that they don't think, oh, maybe I set the bar so that they can maybe try a little bit harder, or do more with their lives. And I want to make sure I'm trying to be as positive as I can, not just for my kids, but for people around me, because, they're always watching, you know?
Yes. Yeah. Well, again, I'm going to bring faith into this. Sometimes we're the only Jesus they ever see.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's our responsibility as a leader, whether it's the home church or in the workplace. So, but I want to talk about, again, your success has been so powerful. If you were going to talk to, I'm not going to say your younger self, but a young manager that's in this marketplace and they're trying to turn a store on, or they're a young 7-Eleven owner, or they're a young internet company owner, what would you say, what was some of the tips that you would give a young leader to be a great leader and to build the empire that you've built, the success that you've built in so many areas of your life?
I think, for one, just going in there with a good positive attitude, whether it's you're in a not you're putting out a fire or you're not, you have to have a good attitude about it, and try to see how you can help the people around you. Because
Mm,
at the end of the day, you're only like, if you left for the day, would that business run without you? And
mm,
so my whole goal was, how can I empower these people, teach them, give them the tools, so that if I'm not there, it it can run as well when I without me there. You know what I'm saying? And so that's kind of what I kind of based my whole philosophy around, where some leaders like to not give the salespeople rebates, or they don't try to give them different tools. I want to give them as much ammo as possible, teach them as much, so that I'm confident when I'm not there, the ship will keep on moving.
yeah. How's that saying go? Don't fish for them, but teach them to fish.
Yes.
Right? And also, John talks about it all the time. I was gonna say John Legend, but, what I meant to say was John Maxwell. But John Maxwell talks about it all the time about leaving a legacy and letting them grow. I think Rick Pitino, I heard this story once. Rick Pitino was being coached, or was it Billy Donovan? Billy Donovan was being coached by Rick Pitino, and Donovan was just a 22-year-old grad assistant. And one day, Patino said, "I want you to run practice today." And he said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, I want you to run it." So he gave them more rope than anybody would have ever given him. And he just trusted him in that moment. I don't know what the result was, but I know the result was it got that young man confidence. And of course, today, that young man, Billy Donovan, is an NBA coach. And he'll tell you it would have never happened if my leader, my head coach, hadn't given me the rope, hadn't taught me, hadn't showed me how to love my people along the way. Right. And yep, a good friend of mine, Joel Manby, wrote the book Love Works. And Joel Chris was the CEO at Saab for a number of years, poor guy. But he was with Saturn too, and he had a Saturn store, and he was with SeaWorld. He was the CEO of SeaWorld. And he wrote this book called Love Works, and it's based on 2 Corinthians 13, the love chapter. And he showed me how to put love into place in whether it's my ministry or anything I lead, how to put love, how to be patient, how to be kind, how to be a good listener, how to ask great questions, how to not be judgmental, how to not direct. And I think that's one of the most powerful books I've ever read on to be a good leader. But Joel will tell you the cover didn't help any, or the name Love Works, because most people think, oh, love? No way. Marcus
No, yeah, sure. I think A.O. Williams, Art Williams, I don't
Yes,
know if you know who he is.
I do.
That guy, he talks about loving your people.
Yeah.
He talks about, and he's got great message, and you've seen the type of impact that guy had in the world, the amount of leaders that guy grew, and I think at one point he had 225,000 employees or just something just crazy. But yeah, no, it's without your people, you look at people at stores all the time that had good players,
Mhm,
and the minute they made, you know, payroll changes,
mhm,
what happens to those stores? They
mhm.
go backwards.
Yeah,
And I've seen that countless times.
yeah.
Just one of those things that, the it's just like a football team. If you move these players out, look at what happened to the Bulls, right? They had a great team and then they just kind of said they're going to start all over, and
Mhm.
I think they won a championship since.
Yeah, isn't that so it's so true. I'm looking up another book that had a real big impact on me that actually was at John Maxwell event and Live to Lead. Marcus Buckingham. It's Love Something. I think it's not Love Does, that's Bob Goff. Love Something, but in the book, and I'll figure it out in a minute before we leave, I'll give it to y'all. But in the book, he talks about the companies that had employees that just loved working there, that felt everybody communicated, that teamwork was a part of it, where love was the essence of the organization. Doesn't mean they didn't hold them accountable, right? You're a great father because you hold your kids accountable. You're a great leader because you love them, but you hold them accountable, right? Didn't mean that, but what it did mean is the stories that love and hold accountable and do coaching every day had better performance in those markets than any of the others by far. And that's not advertised, right? We're always looking for the next technology, but that is the piece that, and I guarantee it just because as much as I haven't hung out with you enough, but the times that I have, that's how you lead, right? You lead with respect. You, sir is a big part, a big word to use with many people. You respect people, thus they respect you. Thus, you don't demand respect, but you get them to respect you and follow you because they know you've got their best interest in mind, right?
Yes, that's the goal. I try to look out for the people that I'm working with, and if there's a challenge where I feel like they need that extra love to try to get them to grow, those one-on-ones and those side conversations, those messages that you try to leave impacts that help them turn it around or change. And it's one of those things that has to be constant as a leader. You have to identify, you have to have that awareness, because you don't understand that certain individuals are, struggling at home, or, things. You got to pull them aside and get them to get their, what I think Alex used to say is get that checkup from the neck up.
Yeah.
You got to do it.
I had a guy tell me the other day, Chris, he said, "Man, I'm worn out from doing all this." He's a high D personality and it's he said, "These one-on-ones are wearing me out." I said, "Yeah, I think it's important to connect with them, but I don't think it's important to stay in and stay in that much that they're going through. It's here, let's talk about what do you want? Why do you want it? Here's how you're going to do it. I'm going to help hold you accountable, but we're going to go to work,
Uh,
right?
Well,
Get back on tactics, but let
the show must go on.
yes.
It's part of the show. You got to put the show on, and if
Yeah.
you can't put it on, then this probably ain't the right place.
Yeah. Have you when you're in your journey of growing at such a young pace, you're still a young man, what is there any books? Did you like certain books that you read that had a big impact on you in leadership?
John Maxwell, he's got, all my books. Unfortunately, I wish this isn't really my office. This is my office for right now. But, my house burned down a couple weeks ago.
That
So,
was true. Oh my gosh, Chris.
I'd love to show you some of these books that I have that I could
Oh.
spin out and say, hey, look at this one, check this one out. But they're, yeah, I think they were able to save some of them, but we'll see what that looks like.
So that Maxwell had a big influence on you?
Yeah, Maxwell, like, you'll see some of these books that I have are all, like, kinda burnt up.
Oh, brother.
It's kinda crazy, but,
Really? How okay, let's talk about adversity. As we'll wrap up in a few minutes, but I just don't want to hang up because I want to keep going with you. But You just had your house burned down. Fortunately, all the family was out, dog out, everybody out. Okay.
Everybody was out, thank God.
But I, what? How did you, how are you handling that? How do you handle that massive
Yeah,
adversity?
you just gotta keep going, like, you can't just sit there and look, there's people I always try to put in perspective, right? If that's the worst thing that happens to me, thank God I have insurance. Thank God, my family is good. Outside of that, there's not much I can do, but let's keep moving forward. Because I think about, people that are in worse shape, living on the streets or, in just bad positions out there in life that, you know, there's a lot worse things that could be happening. So, thank God my kids and my wife are good. My family's good. And that's it. Like, we're just going to keep moving forward.
Yeah, man. That seems like it's your philosophy. You're always looking forward. Let's go. You put yourself around people, like you said, Alex, who are, let's go, let's get it done, and do it with love and with great faith. So I'm like, you've written how many books?
10.
10. That's ridiculous. I've got one out with another one coming in a couple months that you're kind of pissing me off. Can I even say that on my podcast? Yes, because it's my. So talk to me about your books. Give me, I mean, we don't have 20 minutes to hear about them, but I really want to hear about your books and maybe your favorites.
Yeah, the first one I wrote was Driving Sales, What It Takes to Sell 1,000 Cars a Month. And, it's just part of me writing a lot of these books is so I don't forget. It's in the moment. Okay, what would this take? One of the things that they used to do at CarMax is they'd send you to this sales manager training, once a quarter, and you fly out and you go and, do this training. And one of the trainings that we learned was, you get in a group of 4 people, almost like apprentice style, and you got to say you're a new manager and you're going into an underperforming store or a performing store, doesn't matter. What are you going to do to improve and grow the business in the next 30 days and come up with the plan? And
Mm,
so I would always, at the end of every month, I look at, okay, so what did I do wrong? What can I do to improve the next 30 days? And where are the things that I could fix quickly that can help me improve immediately? So, and I run that exercise every month. And so part of that, you know, process when I started writing these books was just so I could recap what just happened to me, what are the big takeaways if I wanted to, have a roadmap, if I would could have just had these books when I was growing, because at the time there wasn't a lot of automotive books. Now there's, with Amazon now it's made it a lot easier, so there's more of them. But you know, during those early years, there was no books that were written in automotive and how to grow the business. And even now, I wrote this new one, the Used Car Manager's Ultimate Playbook, and it's more of a training manual. And I wrote that for used and new. And so I got these 2 books. These are my recent ones, and they're training manuals. So they're literally step by step how you go into a market and how you can grow your business. And so, you know, all of these little books, like the Desk Manager, the Rainmaker, the, this was the, for desk managers, how to, what do you do to desk a deal? What do you like UAing a trade, things like that. Just a little pamphlet to see, okay, how can we quickly, because, most people don't have a big attention span. And so my idea was, hey, let's have a little pamphlet, the Rainmaker. How can we get sales managers to really understand how to desk deals, how to coach your team, and how to move the needle? And so that's where these types of books, but I got the Closer, which is sales driven, the marketing ones, Unfair Advantage, the Digital Marketing Playbook or Blueprint, and then the Drive to 30, which is, as a salesperson, most of them want to get to 30 cars a month. Not a lot of them are like Ali Rita, but I don't think Ali Rita is amazing, by the way.
yeah, he's a
Uh,
good
and Frank,
Cerny.
Bird, yeah, he's good. But this one was one of my favorite ones right here. See that?
Yeah, not everybody will. So what's it say?
It says, "When I grow up, I want to be a car salesperson."
Said nobody ever.
So what I like about it, it's a chill. So I was reading to my son a lot when he was little. I mean, I was reading to my daughters too, but at the end of it, because he's the youngest one, he's the one that wanted me to keep reading. And so we would read a lot. And so I wrote this book about my family, and it's a children's book. And it's literally, you know, I used to joke about it in sales meetings. I said, "Hey guys, we know nobody wrote a book about, when I grow up, I want to be a car salesperson." And I used to say that for years.
Mhm.
And then I was reading a book to my son one day and I said, you know what, I kind of laughed, and I had already written several books. And I said, that would be something. And so I wrote it. And I love this one because I have my kids in it.
Well, you guys can't, some of you can't see this. If you're on Spotify or Apple, you can't, but it's a beautifully illustrated book. And it's a cartoon book.
Yep.
It's a children's book. And inside the picture, it's got this beautiful family drawn out too. That's great. That's so cool. So if somebody wants to get these books, I know they're all in one place. Where they
They're
go?
all on Amazon. You can go to chrisjosephmartinez.com, amazon.com, barnesandnoble.com. They're everywhere books are sold. But amazon.com, that's the easy one. You just do Chris J. Martinez, and all of them pop up under my name. There's a couple other Chris Martinez's out there in this world, but, none of them that have written automotive books, so you should be able to find me pretty easy.
That's right. Well, my friend, it's been really fun. And I'm so impressed with who you are as a person. I really would love to hang longer. This is one that's gone a little bit longer because of who you are and your incredible content. If somebody wants to get a hold of you and pick your brain, to run a store or business and they would just like to get some information from you, how do they do that?
They can follow me on LinkedIn. They can message me on LinkedIn. I answer pretty much everybody who's responded to me. It takes me maybe, a couple hours, but I usually try to respond to everybody. So it's been a pretty good forum there on that site.
Okay. All right. And in terms of what's next for Chris Martinez, I mean, you've got a new house probably one day being built, right?
4 months, 12 months it's being built. So
Okay.
see how
Well,
that looks. But yeah, no, next is just continue growing my software, continuing to write books. I've got a couple other books I'm working on to try to complete the whole set on, operational side of how to just, I want to have a library of, automotive books so that we can, you know, drive the business in any department. So I'm working through that, but you know, I never thought I would be in automotive. I remember one time, I'll leave that for another time, but it's been a great journey. And, I'm 45. So my goal is, if I can keep doing this for as long as I can and have my kids around me, that's all I care for. That's good.
and your new company, of course, not new to you, but IgniteUps.ai is it's you're the CEO. And what you said on LinkedIn is you're leading a mission to revolutionize how businesses connect with customers, obviously using AI. Right.
Yes, sir.
But
It's an amplifier effect. I've got like 5 or 6 agents that work for me right now that are all AI. And I couldn't imagine doing business without all this AI around me.
good for you. And again, what would be one bit of advice that you would give to a dealer if they're looking to expand their AI presence?
I would say just, you know, don't look at one solution. There's many solutions out there, and you may pick one agent for one role and then another agent for another role, and they can all work together. You just don't think of the one AI solution for that fits all. Like that doesn't work. You got to have that one that's a specialized agent in this, because just like OpenAI, Grok, and all these other LLMs, some are good in certain areas, and the same thing in AI. And if your AI doesn't know how to sell cars and hasn't been, trained by an industry professional, you're only as good as the trainer.
Well said. So you have your website for your Ignite is
IgniteUps.ai.
okay. And if someone wants to ask you about that, they can go on LinkedIn as well and get information on it. Fantastic. Fantastic. Well, thank you again. Congratulations again. Bless you and your family during this holiday season. And it looks like you've got some nice digs going on where you're living. So at least you're not in a tent in your front yard. So that's good, right?
Absolutely. I appreciate that. And Merry Christmas to you too and your family. I pray that you guys have an exceptional Christmas.
Thank you, my friend. Just been an absolute pleasure hanging out with you. Thank you for taking the time and to your ongoing success, my friend.
Thank you.
Share this with somebody. Let them hear it. This is great stuff. We look forward to seeing you guys next time on Keep the Change.